a la posición del extremo, en donde está también Garrett Miren. Corre por el centro su hermano Miren, peligro y despeje de Touriño. Y gol. Gol del Ajax. Ha sido Miren. Garrett Miren. Y fin del partido. El Ajax de Ámsterdam se clasifica para jugar la final de la Copa de Europa temporada 1972-1973.
The twilight of two giants, one at the peak of its golden era, and the other battling the heavy weight of its own legend. On one side, there was Ajax Amsterdam. With a European double under their belt, they were chasing their third consecutive European Cup, a feat that would cement their place in history. On the other, Real Madrid. Their continental reality was completely the opposite. Their last European conquest had been Gento & Co.'s sixth European Cup back in 1966. Since then, the club had sunk into a European drought, the first major sign of which was that painful semi-final in Madrid against Matt Busby's Manchester United, with Bobby Charlton and George Best, who overturned a 3-1 deficit. Ajax was about to put a perfect finish on the most illustrious period in their history. For Madrid, however, what many feared was being confirmed. The ease with which they had won 6 European Cups in 11 years had vanished. Since the 1950-51 season, Real Madrid had started an unstoppable ascent to the top of Spanish and European football. A total of 13 league titles in 23 years, 1950 to 1973, showed their overwhelming dominance in Spain. 5 of them were consecutive, and they also strung together 3 leagues in a row, 1966 and 1969. This local dominance generated an unavoidable question. Why wasn't this hegemony reflected in Europe? The question was hanging in the air. Would luck again abandon Real Madrid on their road to La Séptima? While Madrid cemented their legend in Spain, a revolution was brewing in Holland. Ironically, the philosophy that would define Dutch football was, in essence, a perfected British idea. Visionaries like Jimmy Hogan had already influenced legendary teams on the continent, but it was in Amsterdam where his ideas found the most fertile ground. Jack Reynolds managed Ajax over 3 long periods, 1915 to 1947, instilling offensive football and creating a unified youth development system. All the club's teams had to play in the same style. One of his most outstanding pupils was a young man named Rinus Michels. In the late 50s, and again in the mid-60s, he built on Reynolds' foundation, adding a possession-based style. In 1964, he gave a gifted teenager his debut, Johan Cruyff. Despite this base, the Ajax of the early 60s was a team of 2 halves, a powerhouse in Holland, but a novice in Europe, where they suffered early and humiliating eliminations, such as the one in 1960 against Norwegian amateur side Fredrikstad FK. The low point came in the 1964-65 season, when the club finished in a disastrous 13th place in the Eredivisie. That crisis was the catalyst for change. In January 1965, the board turned to Rinus Michels. His impact was seismic and immediate. He saved the team from relegation, and began to build a dynasty. He won the Eredivisie 3 years in a row, 1966 to 1968, and again in 1970. In the 1966 to 1967 season, the team scored a record 122 league goals. In the 66 to 67 season, they announced their arrival in European football with a 5-1 victory over Liverpool in the famous Fog match. In the 68 to 69 season, they reached their first European Cup final, but were outplayed 4-1 by AC Milan and their Catenaccio. From that defeat, Ajax became unstoppable. 2 seasons later, they conquered their first European Cup. The next season, already without Michels, but under the direction of Stefan Kovac, they reached perfection. They won the treble, Eredivisie, the National Cup and European Cup, as well as the Intercontinental Cup. And so, we arrive at the 1972 to 73 season. Ajax was not just a team. It was a perfected philosophy, a machine at the peak of its powers, seeking its 3rd consecutive crown. A giant in its heyday, about to cross paths with another that was beginning to feel the weight of its own history. The competition that year presented 2 very different paths for the future semi-finalists. Ajax, as the reigning champions, went straight into the second round, projecting an aura of invincibility. Real Madrid, for their part, had to grind out their path from the beginning. Madrid's journey was a progressive one. In the first round, they comfortably saw off Icelandic side Keflavik. The second round, however, brought the first major scare, a 2-1 defeat in Romania against Ajax Pitești, which forced the team to an epic comeback at the Bernabeu 3-1 to seal their passage. In the quarter-finals, the rivals were the fearsome Dynamo Kyiv. After a tense goalless draw in the Soviet Union, Madrid showed their class at home with a convincing 3-0, securing their place among the last 4 in Europe. The team, managed by Miguel Muñoz and featuring legends like Amancio, Piri and Velázquez, showed that despite the drought, their competitive spirit was still intact. Meanwhile, Ajax advanced steadily. In the second round, they dispatched CSKA Sofia with a 6-1 aggregate score. But it was in the quarter-finals where they sent a definitive message to the continent. They faced Bayern Munich, another emerging giant with names like Beckenbauer, Meyer and Gerd Müller. In a masterclass of total football, Ajax thrashed the German team 4-0 in the first leg in Amsterdam, making the return leg a mere formality. The semi-final was set, the undisputed champion against the dethroned king. It was the clash of 2 philosophies, the tactical vanguard and fluidity of Cruyff, Neeskens and Krol's Ajax, against the tradition, fighting spirit and historical weight of Real Madrid. For Ajax, it was the opportunity to confirm their dynasty. For Madrid, it was the last chance saloon to cling to a fading European glory. The first leg, played in Amsterdam, was a hard-fought battle. Real Madrid stood their ground and competed, but the superiority of Ajax prevailed. The result was a 2-1 victory for the Dutch side. A tight scoreline that left the tie wide open for the return leg at the Santiago Bernabeu. 2 weeks later, Madrid dressed up for a comeback that never came. Far from being intimidated by the atmosphere, Ajax delivered one of the most memorable displays in the competition's history. With insulting calm and superiority, they took charge of the ball and the match. The high point came with Gary Muren's goal, which silenced the stadium. The image of Muren dribbling the ball in the center circle, unopposed, became the symbol of the changing of the guard. Ajax won 0-1 at the Bernabeu, sealing a 3-1 aggregate victory. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a lesson. Real Madrid, the club of the 6 European Cups, had been outclassed in every aspect by a team that represented the future. With the Spanish giants out of the picture, Ajax advanced to the final in Belgrade, where they met Juventus, another colossus of Italian defensive football. The Dutch machine was unstoppable. A solitary Johnny Rep goal 5 minutes in was enough. Ajax were crowned European champions for the third straight year, closing out a legendary cycle and cementing their place among the greatest teams of all time. For Real Madrid, being the most decorated club in European Cup history was no longer enough. Simply amassing world-class talent or mastering defense would not do on its own. Physicality and tactical freedom had become the norm. What would be the next big thing in football to conquer Europe? By luck or sheer coincidence, the answer would blend all those ideas, but with a distinctly German touch.